Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Catholic Truth Podcast, where we teach and preach the Catholic faith, which comes down to us from Jesus and the apostles over 2,000 years. We want to help you to know, love, and live your faith and even be able to defend it. And on this show, sometimes we have guests who are experts in their field or who are converts or who have written a book. And as you can hear, I've been getting over a sickness for the last 5 days. So finally just getting better and coming back to these interviews. But today we have a very special guest and a very special topic. And it's a very interesting topic because, as you know, or may not know, my wife is pregnant with our second child soon in 2 months. And we have been having a lot of problems with doctors. And in fact, my wife had a lot of womanly issues way back in the day, which made it hard for her to get pregnant and that sort of thing. She had a lot of stomach aches, a lot of health issues, and no doctor could figure out what was wrong with her. I mean, we went to so many doctors, did so many tests, then we went to one Catholic doctor who figured it out in a heartbeat. And after talking to him and a whole bunch of other Catholic doctors, we realized that secular doctors know absolutely nothing or next to nothing about women and their issues compared to Catholic doctors who have the best technology and the best really way of understanding women and their bodies on the planet. So we're going to be talking a lot about this even more because we want women to stop literally, we've told women, don't go to these doctors, go to these doctors instead. And they don't listen and they get hacked up or they get put on birth control. They just get the same 1 or 2 tools that these doctors know, but the Catholic doctors actually can fix you, heal you, help you with almost any and every problem you have as a woman. So in this video, we're going to be talking about how doctors hurt women and how women get hurt in different ways. And to join us today, we have a woman named Sarah Graf. She is a holistic health service and fertility awareness specialist. She specializes in NFP, Boston Cross Check instructor. And she really has the same goal as us. She wants to help women to be healed. She wants to help women to stop being lied to. And this is hard to believe because you'll have to excuse me. It's hard to believe because we think doctors know what they're talking about, and many times they do. But when it comes to women and their health issues, they only have one tool in their toolbox. Oh, you have a headache? Take birth control. Oh, you have irregular cycles? Take birth control. Oh, you have acne? Take birth control. They don't actually fix the problem, and they don't seem to know how to fix the problem. And all of these problems that women have, from infertility in most cases to super 100-day irregular cycles, endometriosis, PCOS, and all these other things, can be fixed. And I know because some of them were in my wife's life, and now we have 2 kids on the way after having a long space of not having kids. So so anyways, enough babbling for me. I want to welcome you to the show, Sarah, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is a big honor.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I get up on a soapbox sometimes because just so many doctors have not helped us. And so many of my friends literally said they would have died if they hadn't gone to the NFP Catholic specialists in the Gianna Center in New York City. And these doctors have helped them to do the impossible.
I know.
And there are just so many good Catholic doctors, and we have the best technology on the planet with NAPRO technology. So why don't we, before we get into this whole show, before we even get into this, maybe just take a minute to talk about who you are, what you do, and your goal for women.
So my story starts, I was raised Baptist in a very anti-Catholic family, immediate family and extended family. And through a long, long journey, it took me, when I first started, from that moment until coming into the church in 2016, it took me 8 years. And discovering the Catholic Church's teachings on abortion and contraception and human dignity and the human body and marriage and the permanency of marriage, that was the catalyst, along with the Eucharist. I want to talk about both, but the teachings on life and marriage, that was a huge catalyst for me to take another look at the Catholic Church and say, maybe the things I was told as a child are not true. And so in 2015, I read Humane Vitae on my lunch break at work. And I was already very interested in Catholicism. I was reading a ton. I was reading a ton of Scott Hahn's material. I ended up marrying one of his students. But I read Humane Vitae, and that was it. I think I closed my computer and I was like, my search is over. I'm done. And I came into the church the following Easter Vigil.
And so, just in case people don't know what Humane Vitae is, it's an encyclical that Pope Paul VI wrote, right? And he basically was a bomb in the church, as Janet Smith says, because this was in the 1960s when, I mean, up until the 1930s, every single Christian in the entire world forever until Jesus believed that contraception and birth control were intrinsically evil and from the devil and hell itself. And then
Luther taught that. Luther and Calvin and Zwingli, all of the reformers were unified in that. And you cannot find a Protestant denomination today that is obeying their own reformers.
Yeah, and it was in 1931 that at the Lambert Conference that the Anglican Church made exceptions just in marriage for serious cases. And as Miss Smith says, it didn't take the world long to figure out that if we can get rid of the fear of unwanted pregnancies in marriage, then we can get rid of them out of marriage. And that just opened up a whole world of sexual perversions and sexual indulgence. And one Protestant church after another, the Orthodox churches held the line, while the liberal Protestant churches all fell one by one, starting with the Church of Christ and going down the hill. But then eventually the Orthodox Protestants caved too as well. And everybody looked to the Catholic Church and wondered, hey, are they going to cave? And that's when the Pope wrote the encyclical and just said, no, this has been an intrinsic evil for the history of Christianity. And we're going to, no, it's not from Christ. No Christian believes it. And all of the other churches have compromised. We're not going to. And everyone was like, what? Yep. But Pope Paul VI made 4 predictions that if contraception and the pill were legalized, 4 things would happen. Could you maybe talk about those 4 things? And did they come to pass? Was the Pope right about Humane Vitae?
The man was a prophet. So putting Humane Vitae in its historical context is really fascinating. So in 1965, I have some notes here I'm just going to grab. In 1965, the Supreme Court establishes a right for married couples to obtain and purchase contraception. And Humane Vitae comes out in 1968. And Pope Paul says 4 things. There will be a general lowering of morality. Women will be treated as objects. The pill will be used to control women. And people will reject the limits of human nature. And I find that last one to be so chilling, especially today with what's happening with this whole transgender, especially with minors, and just sort of this transhumanist agenda that we're seeing. He's writing this from his standpoint, 1968, right? There's always been birth control. There's people have always understood that there are ways to control birth, but with the advent of the pill specifically, I think it was time for the church to make a very clear response.
And this was almost 60 years ago that he predicted all of this.
Right. And so you've got Humane Vitae situated right in between 1965, court case about birth control, and 1973 with Roe v. Wade. And so it's just so fascinating to me that this has been sort of a bulwark, right, against this onslaught of secularism and worldliness and sexual immorality. Janet Smith makes the point that the pill was, by early researchers, it was called the divorce pill. So people were noticing that women were going on it. And one of the things that it does is it changes who you are attracted to, and it changes, it actually has a masculinizing effect on women. And it has an effect where women are choosing, in a sense, more feminine partners. When women go off it, they almost don't recognize themselves or the person that they are in a relationship with or married to.
And you said that's because it changes their hormones and such?
And the sense of smell. So our sense of smell is really a big part of who we choose as partners. And
didn't
so
they do an experiment with, I'm sorry, just off the top of my head, didn't they do an experiment with monkeys in this regard?
Yes. And t-shirts worn by, you know, sort of like really masculine guys. There was another experiment that was done where women, I believe they came in and they sort of on the computer created, you know, what would be like an ideal masculine face, right? And then they were a certain amount of them put on birth control, hormonal birth control, brought back 3 months later. Again, make your ideal, draw it out, or use art apps, create a masculine face, and the faces were significantly feminized. And they did not. The women had no change when they created female faces. So and that's just one example, right? I mean, this is just one aspect of it, but it is changing our bodies. It's changing how we relate to the opposite sex. It has allowed for this idea that you can have sex outside of marriage as early as you want, with as many partners as you want, and it will be consequence free. And I think that is one of the great lies of contraception, that it has, it's going to prevent unwanted pregnancies. We know that it does not, right? So birth control failures, right, are very common. And not only that, the body, you can actually still conceive on birth control. You can have breakthrough ovulation, but the environment in your body is so inhospitable that you could have an abortion, but very, very tiny, microscopic. And I think that, again, a lot of women, when they learn about this, they're uncomfortable, right? This is not something that your doctor is sitting down and telling you in the office.
Yeah.
You're sort of given this, and we'll take your 3 weeks and then take your placebo and everything will be fine. And I think that a lot of people, especially in the last 2 years, I think there's been a real awakening that this is not true. I've been lied to.
Yeah, very, very true. I like what you said. The first thing that Pope Paul VI said was there would be a lowering of morality. I think we've seen that by a lot. And in fact, in 1960, when the pill was legalized, I think there was a 6% out of wedlock birth rate for white people and 22% for Black people. And then when everybody was on the pill, everyone had access to it. You saw the line going up and up and up. Then there was a 22% out of wedlock birth rate with white people and 67% for Black people. And this was in the 90s. So only 30 years later, it skyrocketed. And this was with the pill. So they thought there were going to be less pregnancies, and there were just an immense amount more pregnancies, which is insane. And then I think the second thing he said, women would be treated like objects. I mean, if you think about pre-1960s and, women and how they were treated as ladies many times, and gentlemen, I mean, what's a gentleman today? But, I think between those two, the pill would be used to control women, and there would be, we would reject the limits of human nature and just start saying, oh, well, okay, now we don't even know what a human is. Now we don't even know what a boy or a girl is, and many other things. It's crazy.
Exactly. Absolutely. I think that if we think about, the 1940s, the 1950s, if you had two teenagers who were fooling around and got pregnant, they got married. That was the expectation, right? The boy rose to the occasion. And now what we're seeing is with contraception, the onus gets put entirely on the shoulders of the woman, right? It's her problem. You need to take the pill every day. You need to make that appointment to have a tubal ligation. You need to put the ring in, or get an IUD, or have the rods inserted into the upper arm. And then if it fails, which it invariably will, it is then the woman's responsibility to go and take care of that next problem, right? Okay, now you have to go and have the abortion, and you have to then, deal with all of the consequences of that. And so it's interesting to me that this thing that was supposed to bring everybody freedom, right? We know, has of course enslaved women. The very gender that was told, you take this and you'll be totally free. And the exact opposite has happened.
Yeah, 100%. And it's really, really sad. In fact, everybody watching this should be mad, like just maddened that we've been lied to on such a large scale by secularists, by doctors, by people around. They don't tell you how birth control actually destroys women, how it's destroyed their bodies. And in fact, if you don't believe us, there's a talk by Jason Everett, which shocked me. He went through the whole history of birth control. And now he talks about how several of the companies have been sued out of business because 18-year-old, 16-year-old women, girls, I should say, are walking around with 80-year-old bones because birth control has destroyed their bodies. And it's so sad. And as Janet Smith says, and many others, I mean, it makes you think you're pregnant when you're not. And so it sends you through all of these changes. It can lead to different increased cancer risks, stuff that nobody will tell you. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about the dangers and the problems that, women have seen and face, and they don't even know.
The side effects, right? That list is a laundry list. I wrote some down for our talk. Weight gain, vision loss, cervical fluid drying up, depression, low sex drive, which is how a lot of people joke that the pill really works. It's obviously not true. There's so many chemical reasons, but it really does just kill libido. So for something that was supposed to free you up to have more sex, right? Now you don't even want it, and possibly you've chosen the wrong partner. It changes your sense of smell, increased risk of cervical cancer. Of course, you could have a microabortion, stroke, blood clots. I mean, if you are a young 25-year-old woman who is smoking and taking birth control, let's say, you are really, really putting yourself at risk for some dangerous cardiac issues. And I think that all of this just gets poo-pooed, in the doctor's office. Like real quick, okay, here's some side effects, but you'll be okay. And ultimately, I think it speaks to the society that we're in, because I think the truth is that the doctors really believe that this unwanted pregnancy, right, is actually so much more catastrophic than this laundry list of side effects. And so even in a medical professional's mind, I think they believe that they are doing a service for humanity. I know this woman could drop dead of a stroke, but she really doesn't want to have a baby. And so, and what is at the foundation of all of this, right, is us just turning away from chastity as a society.
Yeah, it reminds me actually of Jason Everett, who went to a birth control conference. He got the documents. It was like 1,000 pages or something. He read it all, and he said at the end, he said during the question and answer time, he said there were some shocking revelations that came out. In fact, people are like, yeah, but can't birth control and pill harm women, or can't they get diseases? Doesn't it not protect against a lot of different things? And the doctors just laughed it off, and they said, oh, we have secondary measures, which they didn't say what that was, but which means like burning stuff off your cervix, freezing stuff in your body, like just crazy stuff that you don't really want to deal with. Of course, abortion would be another one if you had an unwanted pregnancy. And then one person asked a question: if you knew your partner had a disease or HIV, and you were on the pill, or even with a condom, would you, especially with a condom, I think that was the question, would you have relations with them? And not one of them said yes. Like these are the people who are promoting it and saying it's safe, it's effective, it's okay for everybody else, but we wouldn't do it if, if really push came to shove. And that's
Sure.
really, really scary that it just seems to me like there's so much money to be made in this. It's recommended for everything and everyone, but maybe it's a conspiracy theory.
No, I think, so I actually looked into that because I was curious, and I found some data from 2015. What are the pharmaceutical drugs that doctors are sort of being paid the most to push? And the birth control pill, the family, right? Because there's not just the pill, there's other things. I didn't really see that in the immediate list, but the list was, filled with like blood clotting medicine and diabetes, right? I mean, other big problems that our society is facing. So that wouldn't surprise me if there was financial gain for the doctor, but there's certainly financial gain and often protection for the pharmaceutical company. I tell this story a lot, and my sister has spoken about it publicly, so I know that it's okay. About 12 years ago, my sister was on the NuvaRing, and NuvaRing is has a high failure rate. That's where my story is going. And she found herself pregnant, and didn't know for 2 months because of all the ways that hormonal birth control can sort of change your body and your cycle. And so in say mid-January, she kind of realized, something's wrong. And she went to a Planned Parenthood for help. And they said, sure, we'll help you. We will give you an abortion. And then we'll tell you after the abortion how far along you were. And praise God, my sister walked out. My niece turned 11 this past August.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she received her first Holy Communion in July. It was just amazing story of redemption and life. And it really catapulted my sister and I both into the pro-life movement. I think before, maybe we were sort of like nominally pro-life, or, just, it didn't really kind of hit home. But we learned later that there was a class action suit against NuvaRing. I don't know what happened with it. I'm not super familiar.
I think maybe that might have been one of the businesses that was sued for like big bucks, or maybe even close to out of business.
Yeah. I mean, just in our circle, we knew two people, my sister and another woman, on the periphery of our social circle, who had gotten pregnant using it. And yeah, I mean, you can imagine that a young woman, even a teenager, is given, a pack of pills and told, you have to take this every day at noon, right? I mean, you're setting her up for failure, right? And Abby Johnson talks about this, and she's so poignant. She says that the abortion industry wants 3 birth control failures by the time a woman is 30 years old. That's not difficult, right? The abortion pill is not 100% guaranteed. People are human, and they make mistakes, and they forget to take it, or, whatever. So that's not out of the realm of possibility that someone who's been using contraception since they're, say, 14, 15, 16 years old could potentially have failures over 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I know several people who have multiple kids using birth control. So it's crazy.
Right.
So just thinking about this, and like many women wouldn't know what to say. Like, what do you expect me to get rid of birth control? Are you serious? Like, my husband would never go for it. Well, like, are you expecting me to have like 30 kids? Like, how are we supposed to do this? And in fact, I don't know if I have it here. No, I don't have it in Realm, but I have a secular book on the damage of birth control and how to regulate your births, regulate your cycles naturally without birth control, so that you can still space out kids if you need to for serious reasons. And it's actually healthier. It's actually better for the woman. It's better for the marriage. It's better for the family. Natural family planning, I guess, which this is called, isn't easy, but it is better. And I know, as Janet Smith said, there's a 2% divorce rate for NFP couples, whereas if for Catholic couples who are contracepting, they have the same divorce rate as the rest of the country. It's really, really sad. But if we do things God's way, our marriages are better. We're happier. Love is more present. So maybe Catholics haven't even heard about NFP. Maybe they just think it's like the rhythm method or something, which doesn't really work. Can you talk a little bit about NFP and how scientific and
I love this. I love talking about this. So a lot of people knock the rhythm method and it's not accurate, but for its time, it was pretty awesome. And to go from sort of having nothing to having the rhythm method, it was that next step, right? I mean, it's not true. It's not. I had a unfortunate discussion with someone the other day who was kind of coming at me, and NFP is the rhythm method, and it's just not. I don't know how else to say that. That's not an accurate statement. But the rhythm method, basically, it came from this observation that there are patterns to women's cycles, and there are times of infertility, natural infertility. Now, where the rhythm method went wrong was it assumed that everyone's on a 28-day cycle. Now,
exactly.
not only is every woman not on a 28-day cycle, but one woman, right, is not on a 28-day cycle all the time. So the 28 days was sort of the best approximation at the time. And Jason Evert jokes that he's a product of the rhythm method, of a rhythm method failure, which I think is so funny. But so you've got Doctors John and Evelyn Billings, and their research. I mean, we're all really just standing on their shoulders. Their research was groundbreaking. And especially the research they did about cervical fluid and cervical mucus and the sensations of that, and how all of that contributes to ovulation and can be a sign, a biomarker for a woman that she's ovulating. I mean, it's just fascinating, everything that they did over a period of 10 years. Today, we know that women's cycles vary from woman to woman, from month to month. 28 days might be the norm. It might be 30, it might be 35, it might be 25, it might be 26.
Or if you have issues like my wife did, it could be 50, 60, 70. Absolutely. I know of women who have had 99-day cycles, like they're just out of whack. Right. And it was only NFP that brought, and some help from NFP doctors that brought my wife's cycle back to totally like 28, 30 days, like regulated, like, wow, like impossible, but worked.
Right, exactly. Just a couple of days ago, I read an article online from a very well-to-do organization, a very world-renowned organization. And the article said this 28-day myth. It cited it almost as fact. And I was so confused. I'm thinking, this is a medical association that really should know better. So there are a couple of different categories of natural family planning, right? And the big categories are symptohormonal, symptothermal, and then you've got mucus-based methods. And for me and my situation, I had a C-section 3 years ago. And so I was facing a long road of healing and recommendation from both my midwife and my doctor in the hospital, 1 to 2 years to avoid a pregnancy. So we felt like the symptohormonal method was best, and we learned Marquette method. And I'll sing Marquette's praises till the day I die. It's phenomenal. Marquette actually has some research out that shows, one study they did, 100% of women in the study were able to avoid pregnancy. So NFP, when used properly, can absolutely be as effective as birth control, if not more. But the benefit of it is that it's not just about avoiding pregnancy, it's also about targeting conception. And so couples don't just come to NFP teachers because they want to avoid having a baby. Sometimes they're missing their conception day by just 1 or 2 days, right? So ovulation, the act of ovulation is happening every month, really for only 17 to 24 hours. That's it. So if you miss your window, if you think you're on a 28-day cycle and you're convinced that you're ovulating every month on day 14, but you're really ovulating on day 12 or 13, that's it. You're not going to get pregnant. So what natural family planning has evolved into now is this phenomenal science where you can know daily what's happening in your cycle. So you're observing, so let's say a woman gets her period on January 1st. Okay, that's day 1. You are now observing every single day changes in cervical mucus. If you're doing hormone testing, you're charting what is the Clear Blue fertility monitor telling you, what is happening with the LH tests. This can all be done in the privacy of your own home.
Mm-hmm.
It's just phenomenal. It's, I joke, like, what a time to be alive. I mean, this is cutting edge science. The Clear Blue fertility monitor is about $120. It'll last you a decade. And it will tell you as the estrogen is rising, low, high, peak. And so you can target intercourse for conception, or you can draw, sort of big parentheses around your fertile window to avoid conception. And of course, there's no perfect method. We know this, right? I mean, sex is risky, period, end of story, but with NFP, you can discern, you can pray, you're with your spouse, you're making decisions month to month. You don't have to say, well, I'm sterilizing myself and now I'm done. I have no more options. This is a constant conversation with my husband and I.
What's amazing to me is that, sorry, my little daughter was trying to come in.
No, mine probably will also.
What's amazing to me is, we used a little bit of an older method, the symptothermal method.
Yeah.
We liked it because, so basically women, you can prevent getting pregnant if you need to, like if you have a C-section like she did, or like my wife did, or if we have major medical issues like at the beginning of our marriage like we did, and you can actually get pregnant a lot easier, like so many women have. So, but also it can help you know your body, and it can help your husband understand you and know your body, and it's such a beautiful thing in that regard. And in fact, so many women have had diseases and major illnesses that only came out through observing their bodies. It couldn't be detected any other way. The doctors didn't know it was there. And it came out, and they went to the doctors, and they had these major things that would have been really bad for them. But NFP actually, in that sense, saved their life, because you really get to know your body well. So the symptothermal method, if people don't know, is there's multiple ways, kind of safeguards and checks. But basically, my wife just takes her temperature every morning, marks the temperature, and you can tell just by the temperature when you're fertile and when you're not. And there's other safeguards as well that you can check if, that doesn't work. Because sometimes the temperature is fuzzy, or you're not sure. There's a gray area, but there's other ways to check it. But basically, what Sarah's saying is correct, is that this has developed into such a science that even Jason Evers says Mother Teresa used it in India to keep people who couldn't get pregnant from being like they literally weren't supposed to. And she had like a 99.00000 like 96 success rate. So basically almost 100% success rate. So this does work if you use it, but it's so much more beautiful than just neutering your wife, treating her like a sex object, just like you could get sex anytime. Let's just do it, like, no, this is about us. It's about our family. We're not putting anything between us. We're giving ourselves completely and totally to each other without, and as Janice Smith says, putting this barrier, of war between us, like,
Right.
Gotta get my barrier in place, like, no, we give our whole selves, even our sexuality, to each other. Even in NFP, you give your whole self and you don't put anything in place.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that if we are honest with ourselves, right, when we look around, the people that are having the most trouble right now in their marriages are contracepting. There's, I think, um, a real wall between, but also just, what's the word I'm looking for? Resentment. Resentment. And I know a lot of women who kind of get to a point where I'm done. I don't want to take the pill anymore. I don't want to do this. You're going to do this now. You go get a vasectomy. And there's just this clash because the couple wasn't working with the reality of their biology, right? And the reality of God's plan from day one. And I've seen it over and over again. And the simple but complicated answer is you have to get contraception out of your bedroom, right? But that's a cross also. And it's difficult to kind of say that openly, but it's true.
Especially to your husband. Oh, honey.
Right.
But couples that have across the board have just increased their marriage, their love, their respect, and all of those things which go out the door many times with contraception.
Because it's sacrificial, right? I mean,
Yes.
I say this, I gave a talk at the cathedral back in August about this, and I brought this up that, we see in Holy Scripture that Adam basically throws Eve under the bus, right? They sin, he blames her. But that is not the picture of what marriage should be, right? Marriage is actually the picture of Christ sacrificing for us. And so often in natural family planning, it is the husband that is sacrificing for the wife. I think that that NFP really can be an avenue for husbands to lay down their desires for the betterment of the wife, the family. When I came home after my C-section, which was very unplanned, it was really my husband who, kind of full steam ahead. What do we need to do? How can I help you to heal? We were facing about 3 months of abstinence, and it was not a source of like anger or resentment. He wasn't mad at me. It wasn't anything like that. It was just the reality of our marriage at the time. And we both were focusing on our new baby and healing. I couldn't pick up anything more than 8 pounds. I mean, it's very, very difficult.
My wife did the same thing.
Yeah.
And isn't it beautiful? Isn't it? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're about to say it. I mean, it is just to know that you're on the same page, that your spouse is willing to sacrifice for you. And women sacrifice too. I mean, if their husband is injured, sick, deployed, this is a whole way of life.
Yeah. And it's so beautiful that a man can and does sacrifice himself for the woman. And it is a sacrifice, people. NFP is absolutely a sacrifice. But you know what? Pick up your cross and follow Christ. People make it, NFP seem like, oh, it's just a beautiful walk in the park. No, it is beautiful, but it's also a huge sacrifice. Because for 3 months, like if let's say you're on the pill and, let's say you can't have sex for whatever reason, but if you're on the pill, it's fine. You can just do that. But if you're not, and there's a potential that you can get pregnant, but you're not supposed to, then you have to abstain. You have to withdraw. And see, here's the thing. It's beautiful because you can love your wife in other ways. You can say, you know what, honey, we can't do that, but how can I love you today? How can I give you what you need? And I've told my wife that so many times. It's like, and it's so like, it's hard sometimes, especially in the beginning of marriage when it's like, oh, we can't do it because it's not that time of the month, or I'm like, and you get a little bit frustrated and annoyed at first, but that's not her problem, that's mine. I need to change my attitude, I need to change my lusts, I need to change my different things, and eventually I get to a place where it's like, okay, well, how can I love you in the way that you need to be loved? And that was my question to her. And I like, people who are on NFP don't need to do that. They're free to love in different ways, and that, I think, is one of the most beautiful things.
And I think that NFP puts sex in its proper place.
Yes.
In marriage. I said this before, I'm a convert from a fundamentalist Baptist Protestant sect. And there was no talk of this growing up at all. sterilization, contraception, very common in my family. And data shows that it is for couples, especially in their 40s, sterilization is sort of the go-to method. The radical sort of turning on its head when I became Catholic of, what marriage is and the purposes of sex, the twofold purposes, right? Procreative and unitive. The fact that both people are working together, right? It's not my fertile window, it's our fertile window. This is the time when we can conceive a child. And just knowing that even in that year or two after my C-section, if I had had a pregnancy that we were, trying to avoid, but if it had happened anyway, just to be able to face that together as a team with the Lord, right? It's never just the two of you, it's the three of you, is such a radically different way of living, right? Than a young woman who's in a dating relationship who finds herself pregnant and now has to go and deal with this on her own. Whether she has the baby or not, she might be alone.
Right.
And that's another true point is that married women are really not the ones who are obtaining abortions in the US, right? Mm-hmm. Abortion is, for all intents and purposes, a problem among single women. Because, even as a married couple, if you have a pregnancy that you didn't intend to have, you probably are going to just go with it together and, prepare and then say later, we're so happy this happened, right? 9 times out of 10. So, again, I love what Jason Ebert's doing because he's really linking all of this back to chastity, back to waiting until you're married. There's wisdom in that on a whole host of levels.
Yeah. So in conclusion, the Pope was right in every Protestant denomination that compromised the evils of Christianity, the evils of contraception was wrong. I mean, the Pope predicted it like a prophet, and everything he said has come to pass. And I think that's extremely important. And it's even a call to Protestants to come back home. And many Protestants are okay with abortion. They're okay with murdering children. Commandment number 5, do not murder, or 6. And there's
in a church that said that. The faith community that I grew up in said, abortion is okay in cases of rape and incest. Now, the Southern Baptist Convention did not revoke their support of Roe versus Wade until June 2003.
Yeah.
This is an absolute abomination. And I think that this accusation often against Catholics, we're pagan, we worship idols. There has never been a pagan society or community ever in the history of the entire world that has been pro-life. Ever.
Yeah. Amen.
So there is absolutely no way that you can accuse a Catholic of worshiping an idol, but then reconcile that with the fact that the Catholic Church is pro-life from conception till natural death. Absolutely inconceivable.
Yeah, it's just really sad that Protestants have been so pro-death, and that's not an affront or an attack on them. It's just the reality. They've been pro-death because they were like, oh, well, I just did an interview with 2 Seventh-day Adventists who said until like 2015, their official position was pro-abortion, contraception, sterilization, all of that. And even now it still mostly is, but there are many SDA pro-lifers because this one convert to the Catholic faith became pro-life and started changing the Seventh-day Adventists. But the mindset is, well, pro-life, that's a Catholic thing. Catholics do that. We don't want to have anything to do with Catholics. It's their hate and their spite is so bad that they're even willing to break God's commandments, which should show you something's wrong in the first place. Right. But the Pope was right. And Catholicism. and now there are many Protestants on board with this, and they do try to fight side by side with us on this. But the Catholic Church has never budged from the beginning. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
And Humane Vitae is public domain. Go and read it. It's really easy to read, actually. I mean, there are encyclicals that are, for legal scholars, but this one is super readable. And
Agreed.
I think it speaks to Pope Paul VI's heart, that he wanted everyone to have this and read it and enjoy it. It'll take maybe a half an hour. Go and give yourself a treat.
Yeah. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram for the time being. So I have 2 pages. I have my piano, Sarah Graf Piano. That's my full-time life. I'm a music director here in the Diocese of St. Pete. And I've started a new page to talk about this called Ditch the Pill. And just getting the message out that NFP, it's wonderful. It's life-changing. It can be trusted in different seasons, whether you're a single woman, if you have a teenage daughter, if you are newly married and you're trying to avoid or trying to conceive, if you're perimenopausal. I just actually took on a perimenopausal client, and there's, that's also sort of a new phase, because the research on NFP is new. And so the women who are now entering their late 40s, early 50s, right? But I'm excited for the science to come out about that. And I think it's going to just get better and better over the next few years.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. And thank you for coming on our show. I also want to thank our listeners. I'm going to link her information down below in the description notes. If you would like Sarah to come talk at your church or your parish, or if you would like her to write an article for your organization, please check her information out down below. Follow her on Instagram, and make sure to get the word out there about her, because she's really trying to help women who are being hurt, and she does not want them to be hurt. She wants to help them. So, if you would like to bring her in, please check out this the description section below. And if you would like to check out our mugs or our shirts and our merch, or anything else, please see that in the description section below also. And of course, this video will absolutely not be monetized like so many of ours are not, but we preach the truth anyway. So if you would consider becoming a patron, even $10 a month, $20, $30, $40, $50 a month, to help us continue to reach millions of people with the truth that the media and the secular society will not give, that would be super helpful for our work and for reaching millions of women and men alike. Thank you all for watching, and God bless you.